Okay, but what if the fact that you struggle with this and
It's the very
overcome
reason why.
it
Yeah.
is the very reason you're the best possible
Yeah.
teacher for it? And I was like, fuck, you're exactly right.
Hi, and welcome to the Unconventionalists podcast. I'm your host, Mark Leruste, and this is the show about what it's really like to turn your message into a movement. Now, if you're new to the show, warm welcome. And if you're a veteran listener, thank you so much for being here. This is the show about where we talk about people's journeys, the ups and downs, and the lessons learned from both. And I have a very special guest I'm super excited to share with you today. Before I get into that, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you who voted for the Unconventionalist podcast at the Podcasting for Business Awards 2021 under the People's Choice Awards. We are waiting impatiently for the results. But in case you missed the previous episode, we were also nominated as a finalist for Best Interview Podcast, which feels all sorts of crazy. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I really want us to win this, bring the gold mic home. We sure as hell deserve it, and you deserve it because you've been on this journey maybe for the last few months, maybe for the last 5 years. So I hope we can bring this home for you and for me too. Today's guest is none other than Tucker Max. Now, some of you might know Tucker, some of you might have never heard of him, and some of you might have some strong or light opinions about Tucker. But either way, this episode is going to blow your mind. And the reason being is I really recommend you go and after watching this episode, go and do some of your research and look at the backstory behind Tucker's incredible transformation, going from pining a genre of frat-eye, retiring, being one of the first of going from blog to bestseller, making a film about his life that didn't do as well as he'd hoped, to stepping down as CEO of his own company, realizing that he just wasn't the right person to lead the organization for its mission, and going on this quest over the last 8 years of facing the truth, the hard truth, and nothing but the truth. And what happened, and the reason why I'm feeling all sorts of feels right now around releasing this episode and feeling raw and vulnerable, is that because as soon as we start the conversation, pretty quickly the tables turn and the interviewer becomes the interviewee, and Tucker starts asking me questions and starts helping me work through some of my stuff, coaches me, and it gets deep real fast. Word of warning, there's quite a lot of swearing in this episode at times. In the words of Brené Brown, where there is pain, there is swearing. So if you've got young children around, you might want to put headphones on, or maybe wait until they leave the room. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share this with one person who needs to hear this. If you feel compelled to, subscribe to the show, leave a rating and review, and a comment below this video. And I really hope that this conversation helps shift something inside you the way that it helped shift something inside of me. We talk about the emotional yo-yo journey of writing a book. This is the second book I'm writing, and I've been stuck and dragging my feet. And Tucker really takes me home on it and helps me kind of figure out why is it that I've been holding back. And you'll find out what question I asked Tucker, which is the first time anyone's ever asked this question in 20 years of doing media, and he couldn't believe that there was a question that he'd never been asked before. But I found one. So you can find that out by listening and watching this entire conversation. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, the powerful Tucker Max. So just a bit of background on how you came on my radar. So Philip McKernan, I forgot how we were introduced. But anyway, we were introduced at some point. He came on the show and he kind of teared up and cried on my show. And then he sent me like a really nice, lovely voice message afterwards saying, that's like one of the most emotional interviews I've been on, and so we stayed in touch. And I think at one point I reached out to him and said, look, I'm thinking about writing this book. I'm thinking about writing a book. Do you have any tips? And he said, check out Scribe. And I think you were already Scribe then.
Yeah.
And so that you came on my radar, and then he was going to invite me to the memoir because you guys were like running a memoir workshop.
Yeah, we still are. We're still
okay.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was like, oh, maybe come and check it out. And that was, I want to say February, March 2020, maybe. I forgot when you told me to come for the weekend. COVID happened. And then, for people listening, this is one of the things I thought was really interesting is you originally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were hosting these live events, small groups of aspiring authors with like a ratio of 1-4, something like that, to one of your editors, right? And then suddenly COVID happens, lockdown, no one's traveling, and your sales pipeline for March, was it, just dries up?
Went to zero. Zero calls.
1.2 million, I think you were projecting, or something like that, to zero.
Zero.
Yeah. How did that feel?
Well, it's funny, man. There was maybe, I'll be totally honest, 6 to 12 hours of really like stress and panic and what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
Like at least 4, maybe up to 6. And then it was like, okay, let's get to work. It was like the world has changed.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how it's going to change, but what can we do right now? And so then we came up with the idea for Scribe Book School. And it was like,
because you've been thinking about it for a while, right? Like from what I heard, you said you've been thinking about you kind of getting a bit in the way of it, or you were like, I don't know what was going on, but
it was on the marketing calendar.
Yeah.
It was
an
on
idea.
The calendar.
Good idea.
Do, right? It was an idea. And so like, basically the idea was, what if I just got on, Zoom and taught everything that we do, like as our process, right?
Yeah.
The clients pay us for. What if I taught it to everybody for free? And then we put that out, not just once, but we record that and put that out as content and have the best in class content for writing and publishing a book out there. Yeah. Right? Because a lot of people sell that. What if we put out stuff that's better for free? What if their product becomes our lead gen? And so we knew it was a great idea like a year and a half ago, but we just never got to it. And so like,
because you had videos online before, that's the thing.
We had some stuff.
I remember some of, because that's how I then interact with, and Philip sent Scribe my way. I kind of dived into that workshop where the angle's like on your left or whatever it is. And you're talking about, so you had some videos, but it wasn't structured like a pro, like a kind of full purpose school, right?
Right. Exactly. It wasn't serious. And so, anyway, so it was like, I pitched the idea to my CEO and he's like, that's amazing. Go do it. And so I got with the head of marketing and I'm like, well, you got a clear calendar. So how about we just go all in on this with the entire fucking team? And he's like, okay. And so, because like, no, seriously, like on March 12th, what can marketing do? You can't talk about anything that's not COVID or lockdown on March 12th, 2020, right? And so they couldn't do anything. And so, and we were selling a marketing product that was also a luxury good. Yeah. So we were dead in the water, man. Like no one wanted to hear shit from us. Yeah. So instead it was like, okay, send out an email and like literally just spitball that, hey, everybody, you're probably stuck at home.
I was on that email. I remember that.
Right. You've been thinking about writing a book. Cool. This is going to be the time.
And you recorded a video like in your office. I don't know if that was your office in your room. I just remember that big chair with like on Zoom or whatever. Like you recorded before you got your fancy camera equipment that you've now got. Yep. And because you blasted this email, it's like, we're going to give this for free because the world, you need to write your book and all this stuff. And I was there. So remind me, when did the first cohort kick off? Because that was part of that.
Like that was like March 22nd or something. Yeah. It was 2 or 2.5 weeks after the lockdown. Yeah,
that's mad. Yeah, because I'm taking this course, and it's the team, Hal and Emily and so forth. And then at the end, you decided to send an email saying, look, we were giving this for free, but based on the feedback that we've been getting, we want to do I forgot what it was called, author coach. I forgot what it was at the time.
Like a coach, like a writer's room or something we called it, a coaching product. Because a bunch of people were like, this is amazing. I want to buy more stuff from you. And we're like, we're not selling anything else except what we had. Like I don't want the 36,000 package, but I want help.
Yeah.
And so, right, we had to like spitball something together. And once we got it together, it was like, oh yeah, this is obvious. We totally should have been doing this before.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I want to share a bit of my experience for people listening. So, because I signed up to that, I was part of one of the first guinea pigs. And I remember going, okay, I'm going to commit to writing a book. And so, first of all, the other thing I also want to thank you for that you shared my article that I wrote about the experience. Like the first one was about how to judge yourself properly. And then the second one was about my experience of writing 75,000 words in 50 days. And one of the things I want to talk with you, and this is, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. Like I usually research guests, and we also know Noah Kagan, and I'm not going to get into the transformational journey that you've had, and I'll tell you why. People who listen to this can go and find all that information on you, and I don't feel that's the most valuable of our time. That's me personally, right? Mm-hmm. Like they can go and look at Tom Bilyeu's interview, the James Altucher series episodes, all your background story. I'll put some in the intro, all that jazz. You mentioned you asked your CEO what this idea. In 2016, you stepped down as a CEO. And it's not to get into the background story, but I feel like that's a pivotal moment in terms of facing your shit and facing reality. And that's what you forced me to do over the last week of researching you, to face my shit and face my reality. And I've been anxious about this interview, not because of who you are, but because of the conversation we're going to have.
So what do you mean? Explain. I think I know what you mean, but I don't want to assume.
So part of your journey, if people go and look up, well, part of your journey, if there was ever a hero's journey, and if there was ever an opportunity to have a path where you go down and face what you don't want to see, swallow, in your words, one of the worst turds that you have to do, and then start a whole new battle up a whole new hill. Maybe not the battle's not the right word, but like a whole new climb. The reason why I'm saying this is that I don't want to perform. I'm not here to perform. I'm not here to try and get liked by you or please the audience. But what I appreciate about you most that I've seen so far is your relentless pursuit of facing your shit. And something like you talked about ego cracking, the whole thing with the film demeanor. But you having to face in 2016 that you weren't the right person for the CEO, because the whole thing about you hiring the GM and having a shit show, screaming at her, and having the now CEO president telling you, are you helping or are you harming, the vision of your dream? So the long-winded answer is because I'm stuck in my book at the moment, right? In terms of imposter syndrome, and I've been going through this stuff. And I don't want to hug the therapy moment here, but it's, you said something. You said that through your psychoanalysis journey, you realized that you were good, and I can relate to this, at telling stories, at remembering things, but you weren't connecting to the feeling.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So today,
it's way more interesting to hear me.
It's a weird moment, because as I was researching you, originally the narrative was going to be the transformation from the story to who you were to who you become. But then I realized it's like, fuck man, and you're a dad of 3. I am a dad of 2, and you share stories in your interviews about moments where you fucked up with your kids. And where you realized it when you saw the eyes of your son looking at you, how you're reacting to him. And it's so ironic, man. I knocked my glass of water. I kid you not, 2 minutes before this interview. And having to face, what kind of man do I want to be? What kind of dad do I want to be? And so I faced that. The second thing is, when you talked about stories you didn't want to relate to, I went back to a story, man, today. This is why my eyes are a bit weird. I went back to a story when I was about 19, and I've told this story a bunch of times, and I usually say it in a comedy kind of setting, and it makes people laugh. But I went back and I connected to the feeling, and I kid you not, man, I was in tears for like 10 minutes. I had never connected the emotional experience of being so embarrassed and so ashamed in a public setting. And it was because it was that thing you said around connecting what you think to what you feel, or how you feel. Something like that. Is that would that be accurate? Something you said around that?
You know why you always told, you don't even have to tell me the story, but do you know why you always told it and laughed about it?
Well, because as your psychoanalyst told you, your defenses are true.
Okay, right. But
So-
also, here's a super weird thing this might unlock a shitload of stuff in you. So, but I'm going to pass you this football.
Please.
And good luck with it.
Yeah, we call it a hospital pass in England.
Right. So, okay. One of the seminal findings, I think it was Jane Goodall's group discovered this. I could be wrong. One of her seminal findings, or someone just like her, was that when chimps would be attacked by jaguars, they don't have a lot of natural predators, but jaguars are one, or like big cats like that. When like a jaguar would attack, or a big cat, a tiger, and get one, the rest of the chimps would run up in the trees, right? And then they would have this really weird behavior. You know what they would do?
They would try and knock someone off, or
no, they would laugh.
To cope with the trauma.
Because in the primate emotional scale, laughter is right next to grief. How many times have you laughed until you cried?
Yeah. And I think there's also a defense mechanism to it, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I think having avoided feeling, because so here's my opening question for you, or a kind of a question. How do you reconcile the notion that your trauma needs to be a certain degree of traumatic before you can acknowledge it as trauma?
Oh, great question. But hold on, I'm going to answer that.
Yeah.
But go back, like, the reason you told it as a funny story and laughed is because you didn't feel able or willing to feel the grief and sadness.
Oh, 100%.
And so you felt as a defense, the next closest thing is laughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I'll never forget, man. Yeah. I was doing a book signing, like back when my memoirs were selling really well, #1 New York Times and all that shit. And this one woman, she was kind of like hippie-ish, mousy looking, which was not typical for my fans at the time. Yeah. I mean, I had tons of female fans, tons. Yeah. But they tended to be like younger, more buxom, like party types, right? Yeah. And she was nothing like that. And anyway, so came by herself, and it came at like, and I made some joke about like, are you getting this for your daughter, your son, or for you? And she goes, no, it's for me. And I was like, okay, you gotta like
tell me something when I'm missing.
Yeah, because you're. I'm like, it may shock you to know this, but you don't look like the typical person who comes on my book signing. She goes, oh, I know, and so I was like, well, she's like, well, my husband. She's like, you remind me so much of my husband when he was your age, and I was like, is that good or bad? Ex-husband or current husband? No, current husband. I'm like, so that's good, right? She's like,
I miss that guy.
She's like, well, yeah. She's like, she goes, let me just tell you this. Never fucking forget this. She goes, when you figure it out, you're going to be a great husband and father. But you're also going to suffer a lot until you get there. Just understand that that's the path. And I was like, of course, at the time, I'm like, what are you talking about, Grandma? What's suffering? Like, all these women are here.
I'm a baller. Yeah.
Like, if this is suffering, bring more suffering on, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, now I know what she means.
Yeah.
Oh man, she was right.
And
there was a gateway of suffering I had to get through to get from there to here. Right. And not like I'm Buddha or enlightened, but I'm just like I'm through a chasm a little bit. Right.
So wait a sec. So this is something I see you do a lot. This is something I've seen you do a lot around when you talk about Buddhism, when you quote Buddhism, there's almost a kind of preempted. I'm not a Buddhist or anything woohoo, but like there's almost like a reluctant Buddhist in you.
You
What's
mean
that
like
about?
you say like I don't want to make this about me, but and then you make the whole thing about the same thing.
Yeah, right.
So because I'll tell you why. God's honest answer is I'm beginning to think that my mission here on Earth or my purpose, whether it was assigned to me or I chose it or I'm choosing it, whatever. My mission is going to involve helping a lot of people understand things about themselves and heal. And I think most of the people that I'm going to be most effective at talking to are the type that if they think you're coming, if they hear the word Buddhism, they have a whole set of associations that would shut them down, or they wouldn't listen to.
So it's almost like,
right?
Meet them where they
like
are.
The people that Pima Chodron and Thich Nhat Hanh are talking to aren't listening to me, right? and the people that are listening to me aren't listening to Thich Nhat Hanh, right? And so that's why I always say it like here's a good morsel from this thing, not I'm this thing,
right?
You know,
because there's this thing that again, that I seem to hear you talk a lot about around this belief that we are here for a reason, right? To maximize the potential to have an impact on other people's lives. But also, this is the interesting one, that we need to fix our shit or face the stuff in this life, or we'll have to come back and deal with it again.
That's a very Buddhist idea.
Yeah.
That is as Buddhist as it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, look, since we're going to talk about Buddhism, one of Buddhist most famous quotes is, someone asked him what the purpose of life was and his job, why they were here. And he's like, well, your job is to do your work and then help others do theirs. And I didn't understand that. At 20, I thought that was stupid. At 30, I didn't understand it. At 40, it started to make sense. And now I'm 45 and I'm like, yeah, he's right. You just nailed it. That's it. Nothing else to add.
Yeah.
Like the only variation now is like, okay, who I got to do my work, but then who do I reach best? You know, who are the people that resonate best with me?
Well, man, that's so interesting because, this thing about here to help people heal, right? And I know you've got this amazing, like I recommend people to go and hear you talk about it, where you talk about the port, I think it's Alexandria, where Caesar,
the Library of Alexandria.
That's right. And where you want to try and capture the world's knowledge, from people. But beyond that, man, I can't think of a more emotional journey than writing a book. And this is the thing, this is one of really juicy morsel I want to pick your brain on, which is, what have you learned from thousands of authors that have come through Scribe Media? Forget the technical stuff. You've got the know-how. Like the how is on the Scribe School for free. Everybody could get that. What do you think is getting in the way of people actually writing the book and putting themselves out there?
I promise you I'm going to answer that question. First, what do you think, as someone going through it right now, just if you were to guess, what would you say the problem is?
So I think there's a few layers. I think ultimately for me, so I'm going to talk from my experience. Let me be real from my experience.
Yes. Yeah.
So for those who are listening to this, you might have already seen my article, but if you haven't, you can go and check it out. Talk about how it took me 7 months to write one word. 7 months. I was showing up on the Q&A pretty much every week.
Yeah.
Right. With Hal and Emily. And I had 2 calls, all that stuff. What I realized, and this is why this has been a great and very interesting journey in researching, what I realized was I was trying to fill a gap in my soul, or whatever you want to call it, by thinking that by becoming famous, and this is something, man, that so landed with me when you talked about this. My entire life, I'm 36. My entire life, I've wanted to be famous. And I thought that was because I had a gift, I had all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like everybody kept on telling me, Mark, there's something special about you. Like you're going to do great things, like all this stuff. And then I realized that I was trying to write a book from a place of ego. And so that meant that I was afraid of what if the world found out that I was a big fat fraud? I'm trying to make this book into everything. Like this book is the holy grail of my life solution, and therefore it needs to be this perfection. And ultimately, I think there's something about I don't deserve this. I think there's something like I'm not good enough. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. I'm still going through it. but it's an emotional journey because in 50 days, I wrote 76,000 words. Now, admittedly, like most of it's garbage, right? Like I'm okay with that. But the writing, once I committed, it was, and I've got it here. It was that Q&A you did with two of the graduates. Forgot their names. One was a doctor who talked about suicide, I think. So ring a bell?
Yeah, right.
Burnout.
You mean within the Scribe
yes, within
program.
our community. And I wrote it here, and it says you have the permission to write a really shitty book.
Yeah.
Oh, this is it. I know what it is. I was focusing on output, not on input.
Yeah. True. Those are both true for you, right? So, like, I brought Jeff and Darius on, who are former authors, right? And the reason I brought them on was because both of difference. But then Darius especially, like he finished his book, and he was the first in his cohort. He was pretty quick, and like his book's come out, and it's fantastic, and blah blah blah. And so he told me this. He got a bunch of people, message him, be like, "All right, Darius, you finished. What's the secret? What's the secret?" And he's like, "I did what Tucker said."
Yeah.
And they're like, no, but okay, right. But yeah, Tucker's great. Scribe's wonderful. What did you do? What's your trick? What's your secret? He's like, what part of I did what Tucker said do you not understand? Right? Because so here's the thing. If you want to know the one thing I've learned, if I had to sum it all up, the information, the knowledge, I could teach you the knowledge for writing a memoir. I could teach you how to write a memoir in 30 minutes. Just the information, what to do. Nonfiction books a little longer. It might take me, let's say, 6 hours, right? Okay, so 1 hour to 6 hours. Just information, right? And we have the best information, but even if you don't go with us, there's a lot of other books out there that are pretty solid. There's plenty. You can read all the free info all over the internet. And in a couple of weeks of reading that, you will know everything you need to know. Information. The obstacle for almost everybody is not informational. It is emotional. And they will not see that or accept that, usually. Which is why, I mean, you went through our program, like you see what we do.
And you say it. Here's the thing. I just want to say this.
Say it again and again.
When you're in the middle of the course, you go, you're going to want to read this and edit line by line. Don't. You got to read the whole thing. Like, and you say, this is what you're going to do. And because even in the old version of the course, you say this. And so we hear it. And
people
like,
because I'll tell you why. Because
we haven't
dove into, right, exactly. And what we haven't done yet is fully dove into the deep emotional experience at every step. We do it better than anyone else out there, but there's a layer deeper. Basically, the layer deeper, though, becomes therapy.
Yes.
Truly.
No, I get that. Because I've seen it on calls sometimes. And I want to acknowledge you real quick for one thing. Because I do group facilitations as well and that kind of stuff. And I remember this one, I won't put any name or any references, but this one person started sharing the story and he said, and I remember you cut that person and you said, that is such a valid experience, but that's what you need to take therapy. Like I forgot how you did it, but in a really kind of like, it was it was brilliant because it was like,
because what she was doing, I know exactly what you're talking about. What she was doing is she was dumping her shit on everyone else. We've all been in that group, right? Where someone's like, "Oh my God," and then my mom said this, and my dad, and it's like, "Oh, hold on," right? And so when someone's doing that, they desperately need to be heard and seen. Right. So that's why they're just literally emotionally vomiting in front of you. So that's why I gave her that. I said, whatever her name is, I said, listen, I get you. You're right. Yeah. Like this is a valid experience. I would feel the same way you do. You are totally right and correct and valid to want to talk about this. Yeah. But that is what therapy is for. And I had told her to get a therapist before, months before, and she's been resistant. Yeah. And it's like, and that's why she can't write her book. It's like the book will require her to dive into some very difficult, painful, emotional things. And she refuses to get a therapist because she knows if she gets a therapist, she'll actually have to dive into it, right? And if she writes the book, she'll have to dive into it. So what she's doing is circling the book over and over and staying stuck on purpose, not following any of our instructions, because to take one step in any direction means she has to actually, she's got to let go of her pain and start her healing. And straight up, Mark, most people, this includes you, most people, and me, most people prefer the pain they know to the joy they don't. Right? And so the question I ask myself all the time when I find myself stuck emotionally is, what misery am I holding on to and why? Or what am I getting from holding on to this?
Right. Well, so there's also a meta version to that, which is, so the book I kind of started writing, although the 76,000 word will be cut down, is this idea of helping entrepreneurs overcome imposter syndrome to share their story and show up.
Your exact problem.
And my exact problem. And so that was the call in Q&A. Like I was speaking with Emily about this, and I was like, I feel like a fraud. I feel like a fraud because I am getting spit roasted by this thing happening to me while I'm supposed to be writing about it. But what was amazing, like some of the comments were like, oh, but because you speak about it makes me more relatable to you. But anyway.
Well, hold on just a second. Can I reframe that exact set of facts for you?
Yeah.
What if I get it. I get the feeling that, oh my God, so I just went through this. Like, I teach people how to write books, and the book that I'm writing right now, my next memoir about my healing journey, I'm struggling with, dude. I've never struggled with a book like I've struggled with this one. It is, God, it's hard.
You've been avoiding that for years, though.
I've been avoiding it for years. Yeah. I finally started it, and every sentence is like digging up my own grave, or it's the worst. Like, I can't even, I would honestly almost rather like go to like a Vietnamese prison camp, like the old school Vietnam War prison camp. Like, it would be actually less painful to me, I feel like. And I'm being hyperbolic, of course, right? But like, anyway, so like, I'm with you, right? But like, what if? I felt like a fraud. Like, I teach these people how to write books, and yet I can't write mine. Yeah, I'm struggling with mine. And then, like, it was actually McKernan who helped. It's funny you bring him up. He actually helped me with this. He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Okay, but what if the fact that you struggle with this and overcome the very reason is the very reason you're the best possible teacher for it?" And I was like, "Oh, you're exactly right."
But he's quite the man. He's got this skill of being able to see human kind of bullshit and meltdown and just see through your soul. It's something special. So I want to come back to.
No, but hold on. Let's put it on you.
So
Let's put this on you. No, it's just like, what if the fact that you struggle so mightily with imposter syndrome, right, is the exact thing that qualifies you to be the guy who helps hundreds or thousands of people who desperately need that help overcome?
Well, I've got a tougher question for myself. What if the reason why I'm suffering this is because I'm not willing to face the truth? What if the reason why I'm suffering is like I'm avoiding something, because there's something around like we avoid these feelings, right? You just talked about it. This is what you've been doing. Like, we avoid feeling. So one of my questions, and maybe I'm wrong.
Hold on. No. Wait. We're going to stay. This is, I promise, this is more interesting than you can ask me is this right here. Let's look at it from the other angle. What happens if you overcome your imposter syndrome and finish this book?
Then
let's just say I can magically you overcome it and you finish the book and it's baller.
Well,
what happens?
Then I need to put it out there. Then I need to talk about it. Then I need to which also relate to the thing you once said about you didn't want to do this because you didn't want to be back on stage. So there's this thing, right? I have to be exposed. Like I'm exposed, I guess.
What? In what way?
Well, the book is there for the world to judge, or there's like, you know, if I overcome it all and I stay into the sabotage, like, yeah, I think there's something about, then my book becomes a potential gift for people and a target for others, like something like that.
Okay, so it is. So what happens then? So it'll be both. It'll save some people's lives.
Then I won't have any more suffering to be.
It.
Then I won't have any more. I won't have anything else to focus on my suffering. Like I'll have to, you know, because suffering serves its purpose in some way. So maybe there's something like in me enjoying being stuck in this.
Right. What are you getting from this? From this loop?
Attention.
From who?
What am I getting from this? What I get from being stuck, you mean?
Yeah.
Safe. It's safe because it's like, you know, do you remember that very first question I opened up with around how do you reconciliate the idea of what's traumatic and not? I've got, you know, I wasn't abused. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't captured. Like all these things that I've got friends who've been, but I had a tough experience when I was young and all this stuff. And there's something around that experience where I don't think that it's traumatic enough to consider it as trauma. And so I think this whole thing, man, like when I think about all the stuff that's keeping me stuck around this, again, and I've got to thank you for this because the journey of researching you has kind of resurfaced all this shit for me.
Yeah.
But it's what have I been avoiding feeling? And so I wonder if it's that. Like, I don't know, I just went off on a tantrum there, but I wonder if there's something around that.
No, I think there absolutely is. So, like, what do you think it could be? Let's just play around, guess. If you had to guess, what would you guess it is?
The thing that I'm avoiding to feel, or the
yeah.
Well, so it's the thing I went through today. Like, I felt like I didn't belong as a kid because I was bullied by my school teachers and made fun of them because I couldn't spell. I'm dyslexic. I was held back a year. I was kicked out of school. All this stuff, right? Like this kind of shame and trauma around adult teachers making fun of me. So this has always been the driving force behind me of why I've had to prove myself. And I've been enrolled relatively, I've done quite well, like, you know, all things considered. But I've always been performing. I've always been doing things to try and avoid feeling, I think. Right. And so
all performers do, myself included.
Yeah. Right. But this, Chuck, I'm telling you this book journey is the one that's been kicking my ass the most out of anything I've done. Like the TEDx, like giving a TEDx talk, all imposter syndrome came up at some point. I felt like, who the fuck am I to do this? You know, even though I've been speaking on stages. But the book, it's really interesting. It's like the metaphor in the hero's journey. It's like, it's, you know, the treasure you seek lies in the cave you fear to enter, right?
Huh?
And I'm even now noticing that I'm using this conversation as an avoidance of feeling whatever the fuck you've been asking.
Well, think about this. So hold on. So of course you are. You're deflected. Your brain won't let you go there.
Yeah.
How about this? So you are dyslexic. In school, you were told you were stupid. Writing and spelling and putting your thoughts on paper probably led to an intense amount of traumatic judgment.
Yeah, 100%. Well, like 100, like they used to use my spelling tests to show the whole class and call it a cemetery because there were that many crosses on it.
Okay. And you wonder why compiling a bunch of spelling tests together and putting a binding on them might be difficult for you.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Can I give you a slight reframe?
Yeah.
You don't have to spell. You hired us, or you will for publishing, or you did, whatever, or you could, or someone else, right? There are people who are world-class at spelling. The ones who got A's in your class at spelling now work as proofreaders and copy editors. And you can pay them by the hour.
Yeah.
To make sure the spelling is perfect.
But how do you...
And not one person is reading your book to learn how to spell.
But you know this on a rational level. Like, you know this, you've been through this on your own journey. Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing this and like, I intellectually understand it, but then viscerally will still feel like, and you think you're right, like me writing this book is me allowing those teachers to come back and shame me and whatever it is.
No, it is if that's how you choose to make it. Or it can be the opportunity to write a new ending to that story. Mm-hmm. You can't change the facts, right? The old story is Mark is stupid because he can't spell or write. Mm. The new story can be Mark can spell and write so well that he's helped these dozens or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people with a major problem that they've had.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a reason why you're drawn to writing a book, and it's not just the business reasons.
No, because right now, like 100, like,
it's resurfacing. It's giving you an opportunity to bring that trauma back up and rewrite the ending. Right? So you want to know how to go forward?
Yeah.
You actually already gave the answer earlier when you said a story I always told, laughed about with friends. I sat and felt the feelings and I cried and was sad.
Yeah.
What if you did that with writing?
And let the feelings feel? You mean when you write?
What if you thought about, what did I feel like when I turned in a spelling or a writing test? What was my emotion between the time I turned it in and the time I got it back?
Oh my God. You don't even have to like, but just because they used to say surprise spelling test and I would just break that. Like, oh my God, this is going to suck. This is going to suck.
Oh, okay. So what if, seriously, dude, what if you really made an attempt, like get yourself in a great place emotionally, draw a bath, candles. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm very connected to my wife like that. My wife around when I emote and stuff, because it's very hard for me.
Yeah.
And so like, what if you put yourself in the safest, calmest place possible and then started thinking about that and really let those memories come up.
Letting go of the idea that it's perfect or it's going to be helpful just for the process of it.
Just let it come up and just feel all of that pain until you were done feeling it. Like literally feel it and then let it go. Don't feel it and hold it. What you're doing is holding it right now.
Yeah.
Or pushing it away, which has the same effect of holding it. Mm-hmm. What if you felt it and then you don't have to don't talk yourself out of the pain or the emotion. Just say, okay, Mark, what did you feel like when you had a surprise spelling test? And go back to an exact moment and really sit with it like you did with the other thing.
And you write this, or it's just a question of you just feel it?
It can be either one, man. If writing is easier for you, do it writing. If you verbally processing is better, do it verbally processing. Either one or both. And feel as much as you can of what that felt like, right? Yeah. And then let it go. Like let it come up and then say, okay, literally, I would actually reprogram myself. Get into that state of, oh shit, I'm fucked because I'm about to take a surprise spelling test and I'm stressed. Dude, you're laughing because you don't want to grieve. Yeah. Because that was traumatic.
No, because there's 100%. I mean,
I'm not judging. I'm not saying it in a bad way. Like that's why you're laughing right now.
Because when I learned I was going to
remember what I told you about laughing.
Well, yeah, 100%. Laugh and Well, because therapy, right?
Laughing, grieve, be sad, right? And then at the end, here's very important. Replace, like, how old were you? Like, what age do you remember? 6, 7, 8?
It's still, I mean, childhood wound stuff and therapy that I've been going over. It's like around, the earliest memory is around 5, 6 of experiencing shame and trauma around.
For spelling tests at 6?
In France, yeah, we would spell.
Oh shit! You went to a horrible school.
I went to
my kid's
school.
6, and they haven't even started teaching him to read yet because he's at a Waldorf. That's why.
I know that. Yeah.
All right. So take 6 then, right? And literally feel it. Dude, if you do this right, you're gonna feel like that 6-year-old, right? If you really open up, not right. It's a judgmental term. If you let yourself be open, that it's gonna come up. And then cry, or whatever it is you're going to feel that 6-year-old didn't or couldn't feel then.
Can I ask you one thing real?
Wait, listen. Then yes. Then literally say, all right, talk from the adult perspective. Say, hey, buddy, like 6-year-old Mark, you're okay. Everything turned out all right. I know this sucked, but you're okay now, and you end up doing really well. Reprogram.
I think that's the last bit because in therapy, every single time I go back into that room where, like, as a responsible adult now, I think about how fucked up those teachers were. And so I walk into this room and I see myself, and dude, you're guaranteed every time tears. Like, I'm just like, it's not your fault. Fuck.
You got to rewrite the ending.
But it's the ending. I haven't said.
You have to change the ending. So neurologically, what's going on is you're getting back to that trauma state, but
then
you're
I get
not
stuck. No,
you're not communicating to your body that it's safe now.
Yes.
Right. And so, because the brain works on multiple levels of consciousness and subconscious, right? And so what you have to do now is because you can't. It doesn't. Knowing it intellectually up here, which you've known for a long time, doesn't automatically get into the subconscious. But when you get to that state and then you talk to it just directly, there's no magic to this. It's basically how hypnosis works, dude. Like this is what Milton Erickson, all those guys did. This is what you do. This is a way to deal with trauma work. And so you didn't say, hey, Mark, 6-year-old, literally talk to 6-year-old Mark. Hey, buddy, I know this sucks. This was really unfair. They're not being right to you. It's okay. Yeah, you're sad. I'm with you. I'd be sad too. But you're okay now. Right? Like, you're okay. We made it out. You're not going to die. You're going to be safe. I guarantee you that you get out of here and you become successful and you have an amazing wife and kids. I promise that's going to happen. So you can be okay now.
I love that. And how many people do you think walking around listening to this have unsolved trauma getting in their way of showing up?
Everybody, maybe Thich Nhat Hanh has dealt with this shit,
You still do this? Just, I'm guessing, like,
but what's funny with it, mentioning him, he's got this amazing quote. Someone it was on a podcast, I think, or an interview. They were like, do you're this enlightened, basically like Buddha nature, bodhisattva, like what, like, do you suffer? And Thich Nhat Hanh looked at me and said, yeah, of course. He goes, I went in search of truth and I found it. So of course I suffer. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Like, the reason that you are stuck is because you are running from this suffering instead of turning to face it.
Well, which also I saw an interview you did with Noah Kagan where it was interesting because you kind of and you told him this. You said, so what is it that you said? You said something like, because he was talking about how he wasn't, quote unquote, on the same level as your mates, Tim Ferriss and all those guys. And you said something like, I forgot what it was, but it was like, you don't believe you deserve to be.
Oh, he doesn't. Yeah. No? You're the same thing. You don't believe you deserve to write a book. And the reason is because part of you is still stuck in the 6-year-old who thinks he's stupid because he couldn't spell at 6.
Yeah, 100%.
But, dude, I'll tell you, in my life, I started serious therapy about 8 years ago and plant medicine therapy about 2.5 years ago. And I had no idea. I thought it'd be 2 years at max. Now I'm 10 years in now, right? And so and I'm only just now starting to get to like the deep layers.
Yeah.
And everything I'm telling you 5 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, that's woo-woo nonsense. Good for him. Dude, I could show you my journal. I've had to do so much inner child work. Basically, and this is all like, you can actually, there's very, very good science behind this. I just didn't understand it. But basically, what happens with trauma is when you get traumatized as a kid, and what happened to you is fucking trauma. And Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine, they will tell you
this was my question. Like, why is it that when I think about, and other people listening to this will relate to this.
Yes.
I just don't think like I have a right to consider that as trauma because it's not rape, abuse. I'm a white, middle class, privileged kid, you know, all this stuff. Why am I, but that is what I really fascinated by. Like, is trauma trauma, no matter what.
So hold on, Mark. So I have a 6-year-old son. So tomorrow I'm going to get my 6-year-old son out here and I'm going to give him a spelling test. And if he does bad, I am going to mock him ruthlessly in front of the whole fucking family. You think that's traumatic or not?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Okay. But, so it's traumatic for him, but you fuck off.
Yeah.
Part of the reason, so first off, there's two answers to that. We're coming full circle on your question. I told you we'd get back to it. So it was a great question. The one answer is most people cannot see anything beyond what they expect. You know, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are, right? And so honestly, God, maybe it wasn't until at the earliest 50, 60 years ago, the consensus reality or the consensus psychological groups started to really understand that trauma even fucking existed. Actually, about 100 years ago, coming out of World War I, just started to really even recognize that this was a thing. And then it was sometime after World War II, we started to realize what trauma actually was. Physical trauma.
The impact of trauma.
The impact of trauma, what it is. Then we started to realize, well, sexual too, right? It was only about 30 years ago that we really started to understand that there's something, and this is, I am not at all putting down or disparaging physical or sexual trauma, because those can be horrific. But there's actually a worse kind of trauma. And like great studies, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, the ACE study, the definitive study on childhood trauma, decades long, thousands of participants, hundreds of clinicians, found that there was a worse kind of trauma. Do you know what it is?
Mental, emotional?
Neglect. Emotional trauma.
Did you see the chimp study where the mothers ignored the babies and how they let themselves die?
It's 100% true. Kids that were physically, the kids that were physically abused had worse, like it's bad. And they had worse results than kids that weren't traumatized. But they were like here, the kids that were physical and sexual were worse, but the worst were the ones who were neglected. Worse than physical and sexual abuse.
Because it sounds crazy to me to hear that. I'm thinking, I would pick what I had over any of the.
So I would too, man. I like really like except working through this. I don't actually think that if I was trying to have a less traumatic childhood, I actually now, knowing what I know now, I would pick a physically abusive family over the family I had.
Really?
And they're both horrible, dude. Yeah, so like, I'm not trying to be like, people. It is crazy. It seems crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you why it's worse. Here's the current thinking on why. Because, dude, you should bring on Bessel van der Kolk or Peter Levine, like two of the big trauma researchers. They'll tell you all this stuff. I'm just reciting a lot of their studies and their work, and so like I'm just making it easy to understand. Here's the current thinking. The current thinking: humans are networked creatures, right? Like we're like fax machines. Like a fax machine doesn't exist by itself, right? Literally, a fax machine without another fax machine is just a thing. Right, like what? It's not a thing. Humans are the same. Unfortunately, we know what happens when humans are raised around nothing, not raised around other humans. They're not humans. Like the wild boy of Avignon and like all that sort of. Humans are network beings. We only understand and relate to reality through negotiating it with other humans, right?
This is like a book I read about that this guy who said basically that addiction, everything we know about addiction is wrong, that it wasn't about...
Yeah, Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate is one of the other major trauma people who has used Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine's research to completely upend all of addiction stuff. You should have him on your podcast too. He's a genius. I know Gabor. He's great. But the point is, I can be with someone and have actually a loving relationship who beats the shit out of me. And they can be supportive. And I mean, shit, man, that's what the Spartans were like with their kids, right? Like you go down the list of people who've had very physically abusive relationships that are also caring and loving, right? You could even have sexually abusive relationships where it's still pretty caring and loving. Like, you know, a lot of those Greeks did little boys.
It's like the soldiers.
No, but like, they grow up to be a Socrates and Plato. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of that, right? Or say that's good or bad. I'm just saying, but like, you've never heard of a society that ignored their kids and they turned out okay. That doesn't happen. That's not how it works because we are networked, communal, social creatures. We're called the social ape, even more than the other primates. Everything about us is social. And so to be abandoned, to be neglected, is to literally deny the validity of your own existence. That is the way our brains interpret that, right? Especially as children, because we're sense-making machines, right? And so as a child, if you are neglected or told you are stupid, right? One or the other, or any of these other things, then usually what the child will do to make sense of that is internalize that. They'll say, well, if I was neglected, it must mean I'm not worthy. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not good enough. Dude, I thought, to your credit, you at least recognize this for yourself. It's been harder for me to deal with this because I fought that idea. Like your defense has been to kind of embrace that and like and admit it and then kind of try. Man, I fought the idea, and like my defenses were, you know, hyper masculization, hyper sexualization, hyper achievement, right? To defend against what is right, hyper status chasing, right? To defend against what is essentially the same core wound or very similar core wound, right? Like my parents straight up abandoned me as a kid. Like the most you can abandon a kid and him not actually starve or be legitimately unsafe. Or, when you're 10. Right, exactly. Like, you know, crying for hours in my room alone, all that kind of stuff, right? Like not call CPS level, but right fucking there. And so like my on a core neurological, deep primal level, my body and brain are wired that I am not okay. I am not lovable. I am not safe. And so as I succeeded, I got to a level where like my inner child, I'm kind of explaining this very simplistically, right? But my inner child was like, no, we can't do that. That's too far. We're going to die. And so like, I literally hit my
peak. Do you think that's why in your own words, you poisoned your well?
Yes, I know that's why. And the reason that I'm, without going into too details or trying to sound too arrogant, the reason I'm ridiculously and rapidly succeeding in everything I'm doing now is because I did exactly what I just suggested you might want to think about. I went back and got my inner, I'm still doing it, I'm not done. But I went back and got my inner child. Like I went back and felt all those, went back to those moments, felt that pain, dealt with that, had those conversations. And for me, like I'm like actually a little bit jealous of you. You don't need plant medicine and psychedelics to do that. You can just go feel that pain. That shit's way too difficult for me. Like at least for most of my journey, I have not been able to get access those emotions or those feelings.
You're kind of diametrically opposite. I mean, it seems like that at the start, at one point of your life, you were conducting yourself in the diametrical opposite direction of feeling the feels.
Yes, I could not have been
Yeah.
more opposite of
And
what
something came
you're
up for
talking
me.
about. Yeah.
Do you think that's why you feel comfortable and safe when you're around your wife, when you go into those deep kind of journeys, because there's this sense of belonging and safety with that nurturing presence?
So my wife and I have been together now 8 years. I
Congratulations.
trust her as much as I could trust somebody. She is the most stable, most honest, most high integrity person, woman or man, I think I've ever met.
Mm.
And it's still like, oh, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still like
still the child who's abandoned and is still
hard for
yeah.
Right. I only feel safe with her relative to other people. Not really fully that safe with her, just relative to others.
Yeah. So I'm smiling for people I'm smiling because I just had this click of, it's the very same reason why you're avoiding this book, or you've been avoiding this book, because we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the deep feeling of that trauma of neglect and having to go. Because I remember, like, again, I really recommend people to listen to your series with James Altucher. It's quite funny to hear you transition, but you have a joke between you two. You said, I'll write this book when you write the book that you know I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because you were like so reluctant. He kept on pushing you, like, write this book. You got to write this book about your journey, about all this stuff. You're like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
I'm so not ready. Every time I sit down to write this, I have like physical reactions. Like, it's sort of like my you're what people call an ego. I'm difficulty using the term ego because most people think it means arrogance, which obviously
I think
egotistical
it's
people
conscious
can
of
be.
self. It's just the
Right.
idea of self. It doesn't have to be negative. I think there's reactive ego and there's conscious ego. This is my
what I call it is the protective self,
yeah.
right? Like the part of the ego's job is to keep you alive.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one of the ways it interprets that is to keep you the same, because if you don't change, you can't die. That's basically, on a simplistic
Minimize
level,
energy consumption. You're probably going to yeah.
On a very simplistic level, that is sort of how the programming of the ego in the unconscious works, right? And so, like, the ego's job basically is, the way I explained it to a friend of mine who understands finance is, imagine the most risk-averse CFO you could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. That's the ego's job, is to keep you the same, right? Like, that's what it does. And it looks at it. It has your best interest in mind. Like, it's trying to do its best. It's just not real effective if you're trying to grow, or you're trying to change, or you're trying to evolve, which I think is the point of life. And so, like, it's good. You have to think of yourself as the executive, right? And then you also have, like, in a company, you have a CFO to keep you safe, and you hire a management consultant to tell you to do risky shit. And then you listen to both and then decide, right? Yeah. Well, you can think of that, like, you can think of yourself that way, right? But the deeper you go, the more conservative it gets, and the more the smarter the defenses get. I'm at the level now, man, where it's like I'm getting to some of the absolute core fucking wounds for me in my life, and this book is like, not only is the book, it's not writing about the pain or the wounds. That's not hard.
Because you always said that you were better at being vulnerable in your writing than you were in your real life. True.
I'll tell you really what I think that maybe the deepest fear is. This is hard to even admit to myself. So, I mean, my first memoirs literally invented a new literary genre and defined an experience for an entire generation of people. Like, everyone I meet, about roughly 30 to 50, knows who I am and has heard of my books and is like, in America at least, right? Yeah. So for a certain generation, or call it 35 to 45 or whatever, for a certain generation, like, and for a certain type of person, I'm the fucking guy, right? And so, like, how do I follow that?
How do you,
You
follow it or decouple?
No, not decouple. Like it's hard for me to even remember who that dude is. I've changed and grown so much. More like this is an ego-based fear, right? It's a thing I'm holding on to, but I still like I can see it. It's like I nailed that so perfectly. Who I was at the time, the voice, and the only reason, man, is because I let rip. I let it go. You don't want to know why? It's so funny. So, two of the great writers in the history of the world, like if you made a list of the top 10, I'm not sure where they'd fall in the top 10, but both of them would be in the top 10. Tennessee Williams and Fyodor Dostoevsky, right? Dostoevsky is arguably the greatest novelist in any language of all time. Tennessee Williams is probably the greatest playwright, at least in the modern era, right? And so I didn't understand. Both of them wrote the same way. And I didn't understand this until I got to this book. What they would do is both of them, their first work they started, they were poor and destitute and broke and hungry. And they wrote their first work and it blew up and they got rich and famous and they didn't know what to do. And so Dostoevsky gambled all his money away and Tennessee Williams drank and whored and gambled it all away. And then they got broke and destitute again and they wrote their next work and it was and they both got in these cycles. And I'm like, why would they do that?
But
and now I understand why. Now I understand why. Right? Because like when I wrote my first books, I had nothing to lose. And in fact, not only did I have nothing to lose, I was so poor I couldn't afford protein. Like I had to date girls who would bring meat over. Like I'm serious, man. It was bad.
Yeah.
And like now I'm rich. And I'm not gonna destroy myself to get poor enough to write this again because I have kids and a family, right? And so it's like, how do I get myself back to that place?
So here's a question for you, Ryan. Is it the hunger, or is it the now you've got too much to lose that you're not risking and you're not letting it rip?
It's a great question. I don't know if I know the full answer. My first books were written. It's funny if you read all three of my or all four, you can see a massive difference between book one and book two. They were only written like 2 or 3 years apart. But the thing that changed is book one made me famous. And book 2 and 3 stories are arguably, I know they're better written and they're arguably funnier. But every one of my fans will tell you Beer in Hell, the first one's the best book. Because if you read it, there's a desperation in that book and an energy in that book that's not in the other two, right? Even though technically they're better. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
Do you think the audience was different?
The answer.
It sounds like the audience was no, but in the sense that in the first book, you're originally writing it to your 9 best mates, and then the second book, you're writing it knowing that the first one worked.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I just noticed the time. I just want to be conscious and about the time, so we just went 5 minutes over.
Whatever. I don't know, man. It's a really good question. I'm not sure. Like, I'll tell you right now, I'll tell you straight up. So we can end on this if you want, or we can keep going. I am not thinking about this because what I've learned is if I try and solve the book writing problem, I'll get stuck there forever.
Yeah.
So instead, what I do is I go a level up and I solve the emotional problem. And then the book writing problem takes care of itself, which is why I didn't.
Why do you say go up and not down? Is it because you're leveling up? You mean you're leveling up into the emotion as opposed to going down into the emotion?
Because if you look at it like meta layers, the book is a thing you're doing. The emotions are the substrate upon which it's operating.
Okay.
So you're going up a level. You could say down. The point is back.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, so that's why with you, I didn't talk about your book issues because it's not a fucking informational problem with you. It is an emotion. Same with me. So I'm not worried about where the motivation's coming from. I'm not even going to think about my book. What I'm doing right now is deeply, deeply focused
On the
basically
emotional.
full time on my deep, and dude, I'm deep inner child work, specifically the stuff that I talk to you about, except even way levels
Yeah.
deeper. Like that's the only thing I'm focused on, because I feel like if I get to the bottom of that trauma well and I deal with all of that trauma of mine, because there is a bottom to it, it's not endless.
Yeah.
If I deal with that, I think the book problem is going to take care of itself.
And will you be okay? Should you go down this road, go as deep as you can, come out of it, write this book, no matter how the book does? Will you be all right with whatever results it comes out?
I probably won't be able to start the book until I've accepted that. For me, until I've truly let go of the results.
Yeah, well, I feel that feels right.
For me personally, just because I've already done it before and I'm a huge, like, it's different for you. This is like a whole different thing, or it could be different for you. But for me, I think I have got to be able to let it go before I start it, because because me especially, I know what great is when I'm writing it. I know, I can feel it. Even if, no, seriously, when I'm writing something, I could be in the middle of a paragraph, of the first paragraph, the first thing I could be like, oh, this is going to be great, or this is going to suck. Right. Yeah. And like, and I even adjusting for all the editing and everything else, I could just feel it. Right. Yeah. And every time I've sat down with this book, a half a sentence in, I'm like, this is wrong. It's not feeling right. And I think it's because I haven't dealt with my underlying issues, not necessarily around the book, but just like with success and with self-love and all that stuff.
Well, it's, it sounds like books in general are a mirror into our souls and the things that we need to level up on. It feels like there's,
I would tell you, everything is. Books are just a really sharp, clear mirror. But I think.
But why is that? Like, just like, why is a book more than a podcast, or more than a
because it's a reflection of your identity. It's a permanent, right? It's like a statue. It's there forever. It's unchangeable. And I don't mean this literally, but the perception of it, right? The perception is permanence, unchangeability, and identity.
No wonder that shit comes up around all that. So I want to end. There's so much more I could talk about, but there's one of them that I don't really hear you talk that much. Maybe I just didn't listen to the right interviews. And I have the same belief that truth and MMA and mixed martial art, like, there's no hiding. Like, my family and friends used to say, "Why are you into MMA?" And I said, "There's nothing more." It's like the modern gladiator, but it's like, it's once that octagon cage closes, I don't give a shit how much chat you have. It's just
truth.
It's just truth.
The truth will find you on the map.
Yeah. So how are you doing? Like, where are you at with your rollings? I don't know if you're locked down.
Yeah, I am. By the time this podcast comes out, because it's like coming up, I will have my brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. I'm just about to get it. Yeah, like Hoyler finally. Hoyler, I'm getting it from Hoyler Gracie.
Yeah,
who's like my him and Paulo are my main teachers.
Yeah, and
so I'll be a brown belt. I'm on track to have my black belt by the time I'm 50, assuming nothing weird happens. Which you cannot assume that now. No. Who fucking knows what's gonna happen? But hopefully I'm on track to have my black belt by the time I'm 50. And like, I'm talking like from Hoyler Gracie. So this is like as real as black belts get.
Yeah.
And I don't do as much MMA because I'm 45 now and it's just brutally hard on the body. I do a lot of kickboxing or Muay Thai still.
Yeah.
And I'll train every now and then, like full contact, let's go. Yeah. The problem is, man, I train with guys like Tim Kennedy who fought in the UFC. And so it's like once a month is about all I can handle with that.
But there's a funny anecdote. There's a funny anecdote. I hope you don't mind me sharing this. He told us in the group around, you attended one of his workshops or weekends, and instead of writing your book, you send him a 2,000 word email of recommendations of stuff. But the reason why I brought up MMA is, how has MMA served you, or martial art like Brazilian? How's that served you in your quest for truth?
So I went to a meditation coach a while ago, and I told her I was bad at meditating, and she asked me a bunch of questions about my life, and then she stopped on Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, and she said, "Oh no, you meditate. You just get punched while you meditate." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she kind of explained meditation is being mindful and completely focused on the immediate moment. And she's like, is that how, she kind of explained it. She's like, is that how you are when you're in your training? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, if I'm thinking about anything other than that moment, then I lose. And she's like, you found your meditation. And I was like, shit. Like, so, dude, there's no, not only is it, now I approach it that way as my mindfulness practice as well as my exercise. So it's like kind of amazing at both. But then the other thing is, it's the place I can't hide from myself, man. Like, I'll give you a really good example. Like, I like to tell myself the story that I'm really courageous and that I always take the courageous action and this and that. And that's more true than false. But dude, like a couple weeks ago, or maybe at this point, a couple months ago, very recently, I was rolling against somebody and I fucking quit and I tapped early. He's huge. This guy played football at Rice. He's like 260. He is a world-class athlete. And he's like, even though he's only a blue belt, he's awesome. Like, he's fucking amazing. And like, he's like competes at a high level. And he's one of those dudes who's like, might end up being a world champion. And because he's an insane athlete, has super high physical intelligence. And he's like 26. And it's just like, oh God. And he was just smashing me. And I could have fought it, man. Like, it was not like an arm bar. So I could have fought it. And I was just like, get
fuck
off.
This,
fine. Take it. Fuck it. Right. And like, I made my excuses to myself. But then it's like, I was literally sitting in my car at the end. And I almost started crying, not because I quit, but because I was lying to myself about it. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? Like, it's okay to quit, but don't fucking pretend that you didn't quit. You quit, right? Not tapping. Like, if he had me in an arm bar, my arm was going to break, I should tap. And that's cool. No problem. Like, there's no shame in that. Quitting was the thing. And it was like, and then I really had to take a step back and really be like, okay, all right, that's where I am. And so I need to own that and feel that. And then actually really helped me. It's one of the reasons why I'm getting my brown belt is because, I guess that was about 6 months ago, because I really had to deal with, I thought I was past certain parts of jiu-jitsu and I wasn't. And so I had to go back and focus, and actually with our main instructor, focused on putting myself in super bad situations and getting that panic response up in me. And so I could sit with it because I thought I was past it and I realized I wasn't, right? And so like, it's part of what really helped my game level up.
Yeah. I could so see that. And I just did a bit of MMA and I injured my knee in an MMA tournament. I didn't tap because of my ego. I had a knee bar and that was it. I've got a few five questions before we quit real quick.
Yeah.
2021. Any intentions, any words, like how do you approach the new year? Do you have like a kind of a ritual, a new word, an intention, a mantra, anything?
It's funny you asked that, man. Last night, so I feel like I've got to some, I don't know if it's the deepest, but some extremely deep pain and trauma, whatever it is, like some really deep, dark stuff in me. And I'm about to do my first ayahuasca session, plant medicine stuff. And it's like 2 weeks from now. Is
that your first?
First one. Never done ayahuasca.
Yeah, I've been called to the plant medicine for a while. And anyway.
So I've got an amazing facilitator here who this person knows me well. Their energy vibes with mine. And I picked ayahuasca this time for a very specific reason because of some of the stuff that's coming up in me and the way ayahuasca works. I think will fit with this. But fuck, man, I can probably read you what I wrote last night. I said, all right, this is going to sound pretentious. It just is what it is. I remember reading that before his moment of enlightenment, the Buddha suffered like as he was sitting under the Bodhi tree, he basically suffered this immense pain. He felt like he was dying, like his whole body was being ripped apart at every joint. And that this was the pain of truly facing reality, like as clear as you can. And that once he felt that, he was able to transcend it and whatever. And so what I said is, I feel as if I'm ready to, no, actually I didn't. I am ready to face that pain and pass through it. I'm ready to see the truth, the whole truth. And if it's painful, then so be it. I'll face that pain. I'll feel that pain. I'll let it pass through me. And if I die in that pain, then I die. I'll feel everything the truth brings up and let it pass through me. And that was like my intention for ayahuasca was, I like to think that I'm courageous, and I like to think that I can see clear truth and that I adhere to it. But I think I've been fooling myself, at least at some level. And there's no way out except through, man.
And do you believe those words? Like, are those words for you like rational, intellectual words you put down, or is it like?
No, that wasn't a thought. That was more of a. It was more of I don't want. There's no way to say it without sounding kooky. It was more of an invitation to the universe to show me, to bring in the things that I have been running from or avoiding and resisting.
Wow.
You know, right? Like, and whatever they are, pain, joy, and it doesn't all have to be pain. We usually just tend to resist pain. We don't usually tend to resist joy, although that's not always true.
Yeah, I get that. You know? Well, it's almost like you've been running away, and now you kind of say, "I'm sitting still. I'm ready. Come and visit when you will." I get that.
No, that's pretty much exactly it.
If you could help anyone get their book out, any client that you could Scribe could get, is there someone on your list that you'd like? I'd love to have them as a client, or I'd love to have them come through our process.
I don't know. That's good. No one's ever asked me that question, which is super rare. I've been doing media for 20 years. Seriously, 20 years. Wow. Is there anyone? Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. I don't know.
All right. And I'll add an extra layer if you want dead or alive.
Oh, well, then that's a whole... I could think of 20 dead people. I mean, oh, dude. I go on and on.
Well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? That dead people comes to you like that, but someone alive... Or not. Maybe it just says where your attention is.
What came up just twice right now was I feel like the people, the quote right answers to that for me, not the societal, the answers to that are people I don't know or wouldn't realize, you know, like, yeah, I have a feel the world's about to change, not about to, the world's already changed. Most people are starting to wake up to the fact that the world is not what we thought it was, and that we're never going back, and we're about to go through an era of rapid change. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be both.
Do you still have your ranch? Did you get your ranch in the end? Your commune that you were supposed to build?
I have the house now, like the vacation.
Is this where you are?
Vacation house, yeah.
Okay.
Like, and we're about as far away from people as we can be in civilization.
Do you have your cows? Did you get the chickens? Did you get all that?
The ranch we're gonna find, because I think I'm gonna do it with a group of families,
saying,
and so we're looking for it now. I want to go off grid, man.
No, I get that.
Insulating ourselves from certain societal shocks that are coming. But I feel like we're about to enter a period where a lot of people who were in evolutionary or in a primate research, what are called sigmoids, which are like in a primate troop, there's an alpha, right? Or a wolf troop, there's an alpha, and then there are usually 3 or 4 sigmoids, which are animals that could be alphas, but aren't. And it takes a certain, usually a disaster, like a social, psychological, and environmental shift to trigger them to become alphas from sigmoids. we're about to go through a very, very tumultuous period in history that's going to trigger a lot of sigmoids into alphas. And so ask me that question again in 5 years.
Okay.
My goal ideally is that we'll be doing books with all of them, because I'm going to see them and be like, that person needs to get their voice out. I can think of one already, one or two, maybe. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. That actually just unlocked that. But I think we're about to see a whole new slate of leaders. Like the leaders of old were influencers, performers. The Kardashians, bless their hearts. the next no, everyone shits on them, but I'm not a Kardashian shitter, not anymore. But there's a new generation, and they're not going to be performative. They're going to be doers and responsibles. I'm excited for them.
What keeps you up at night?
Man, 2 days ago, if you'd asked me that question, I would have said nothing, because I've really started to find serious peace. And then, of course, like one of those I forget who said that, but they're like, if you think you found inner peace, go home for the holidays.
Yeah.
Well, that just happened. Today is January 7th. Yesterday, January 6th, America, like I said before, America had its Reichstag incident. And it was like, oh, man. Like, it's so depressing to watch what's going on in America, because it's like, I can see the pain and the suffering and the misery on both sides, 100%. Right? If you think 100%. One side's wrong and one side's right, then you've been fooled. Either you're too stuck in your trauma or you've been fooled. They're both miserable and suffering, and they're both looking at each other through very distorted prisms to otherize each other, to create an enemy to project their shit onto. And I can see it happening in real time. Man, the flames are coming. I'm just hoping they don't engulf the world.
Do you watch news? Like, do you actually...
Dude, there's no such thing as news in America. I don't know how it is in Europe. There's no news. There's only propaganda.
Yeah.
But there's only propaganda.
Because I'm curious, because I stopped watching that, like low media diet, all that stuff is. But I'm just wondering if that is something you consciously avoid, or do you kind of look at headlines? And
I consciously avoid. I don't headline. There is only propaganda. I follow a few people on Twitter who I consider kind of canaries in the coal mine, and so I figure out what's going on through their commentary. Okay. And not necessarily because I trust them. It's like I've calibrated their level of consciousness exactly.
Okay.
So I know if they're saying X, what it means.
Then something to kind of look at. Okay.
Right. Exactly. And it's on both sides.
Yeah.
You know.
Before I ask you my last question,
on all sides,
I want to just heartfelt thanks, man. Just acknowledge you for. And it's so interesting that you said that now. Your mission is to help heal people, right? Like, there's something about healing, because there's something about going through your journey and hearing what you've been going through and almost being willing to speak the truth, which for me, I mean, I ended up crying today for 10 minutes because I was thinking about this event because you talked about it. And thanks for Scribe, man. Thanks for the community. Thanks for having that Facebook and showing up and sharing stuff in the Q&As and that's been fun. So
cool, man, dude. It's my pleasure. You are the exact avatar of the person that we started this company to help, because you have all this knowledge and wisdom and experience that can unlock so much for so many people. I'm not going to reach those people, but you can. And so if we can help you do that, then I've done my job. We've done our job.
So last question, what does being unconventional mean to you?
It means, especially in this world, it means genuinely thinking for yourself. And I thought I totally thought for myself. And then once I really started on my plant medicine journey, I was like, oh shit, maybe I thought for myself about half the time, and looking around, I thought a lot of people did. Now I realize me thinking for myself half the time puts me in the absolute 1% of people. No one hardly thinks for themselves. And the ones that do,
do that.
This. Yeah. Right. Well, it's like literally just look up what's the price of nickel, what's the price of iron ore, what's the price of steel. He just did his own fucking math.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this is
we could do it cheaper than NASA's been creating it.
And so now NASA pays SpaceX to launch their shit. Like, I mean, like that's what thinking for yourself looks like in just engineering, which you would think, like, if there's anywhere people are engineering, like it couldn't be more cut and dry.
Yeah.
And so if rocket scientists aren't even thinking for themselves, if it takes a legendary visionary entrepreneur to do the math in rocket science, think about how many other areas no one's thinking for themselves.
Or even allowing themselves to. Yeah, cool. What's the website where people go and check out Scribe? And if they want to sign up to the school online, find out more?
Just go to scribemedia.com. Everything's there. You can find Scribe Book School. Everything's there. Scribemedia.com.
Taco, appreciate it, brother. Thanks for this. That was awesome. And, hopefully we'll be able to meet up in some point in the future, whether that's with McKernan or in person. So thanks for that.
Of course. Thanks. You too, man.
There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And when I say I did, I mean it was a painful but amazing conversation. And I'd love to hear what you got out of it. Did you connect with any of that? Did that bring home anything? Did you relate to anything that we talked about? Let me know. Share what came up for you. I'd really love to hear. And again, if you think this conversation can help one person, please share it with them, because the more we can spread this conversation with other people, the more we can heal the world, right? If you're interested in finding out more about how you can write your book and how you can join the Scribe school, go and check out Scribe Media. All the show notes are in the link below. And my commitment to you and to Tucker, which I made offline, is I'm going to complete and finish my book. I'm going to write this book because it's needed, not only just because I want to go through this process of transformation and healing, but also because I think it can help others too in the process. So watch this space. The book's going to be coming out. I'll take you on board on the journey and would love to get your input in helping shape this into the book that can be the most helpful to you. So until next time, know that you matter, know that your story has value, and that if you have anything that you need help with, make sure to reach out to someone. And can't wait to see you next time. I'll see you then.